Hey everyone, what's up guys? Welcome back to The Collision. Daniel here, and the Harry Potter series has apparated back into movie theaters, so grab onto a portkey and let's talk about this. So, Fantastic Beasts. This is the third movie in the Fantastic Beasts, kind of like the prequel series to the Harry Potter movies. And really, the dark arts have been against this series from the start. Just everything that could kind of go wrong with this series has gone wrong, with kind of off-screen controversies with several of the actors, and even just J.K. Rowling kind of becoming more of like a hot-button kind of controversial figure. But most of all, these movies have just sort of been undone by bad scripts. This not kind of a joyless tone overall, maybe more cynical than compared to like the more hopeful, optimistic of the Harry Potter movies. And with The Secrets of Dumbledore, the third entry, the Fantastic Beasts themselves are almost all gone from this series, and unfortunately, so too is most of the magic from the Harry Potter series. This is not a good movie. This is maybe on par with what the other two have been, the first two Fantastic Beasts, but this is definitely not an improvement, and just kind of another example to me that this series is probably kind of well beyond its lifespan. But let's get into this. But before we get into this, this is a review of The Secrets of Dumbledore. This is not a just a wider discussion on Harry Potter at all. But I do think we just real quickly, this is a Christian movie review. We can address the kind of the giant hippogriff in the room, and that is magic. This is a Harry Potter movie, Harry Potter or Wizarding World. There are magic, there are spells, there's witches and wizards. This is the 11th movie, which is crazy, in the Harry Potter series. So I suspect at this point that most people have already made up their opinion one way or the other. If as a Christian they're uncomfortable with it, or think it's satanic or just not appropriate, or if they you can separate kind of the fantasy magic of it from like the real kind of culturally real pagan stuff that like the Apostle Paul was talking about and condemning throughout the Bible. I fall into that second camp. I don't have a problem with the magic in these Harry Potter movies, but I know a lot of people do, so I did want to address that. Though I will say that the magic in these movies has increasingly become less and less kind of inspired by anything real world, even like the spells themselves. No one speaks spells, and so it's definitely less. But I think at this point, either you love it or you're against it. So just to throw that out there. But I do want to get into. I think if you, for those that are more interested in this movie, rather than Harry Potter in general, I do think that there is more to discuss for this movie, and kind of I think why this movie doesn't work for me, and I think even why kind of this whole prequel thing isn't working. And like politics has always been like a small part of it's always been like a sprinkle of it in the Harry Potter cauldron. You've always had some politics in these movies, but for the most part, the Potter films have kind of dealt with more like kind of universal big picture themes of like friendship and heroism and sacrifice, and whereas the Fantastic Beasts movies, and none more so than The Secrets of Dumbledore, seems a lot more focused on like contemporary kind of current events commentating, and this film is very politically charged. I don't know if it's necessarily like coming at it from like a specific political angle, but like the whole plot of this movie centers around an election. This is Grindelwald trying to get elected kind of as whatever the prime minister or the leader of the wizarding world, and he's kind of he's kind of gone from this like evil wizard trying to raise an army to take over global domination to this like suit wearing corrupt politician. And even some of the like some of the quotes and stuff, like you can draw parallels to they're talking about peaceful transfers of power, and they're talking about sort of these leaders, and they're kind of leading people to follow them and to hatred and bigotry, and there's some good stuff in there. Like one of the lines that jumped out to me, where one of the characters says, "Things unimaginable today will seem inevitable tomorrow." I think that's just a good lesson, regardless of where you fall politically. And I don't think there's anything wrong with the fact that movies deal with kind of current event stuff and political, and but some of the timelessness of the Harry Potter movies has been lost, and I think this in general, like I think like these Potter kind of fantasy stories have always been like an escape from the sort of more hopeful place where we can kind of go and escape from this like the muck and mire of our 2022 world. And the Fantastic Beasts movies, and especially this Secrets of Dumbledore, is just sort of taking all the worst of the real world and just like shoving it into the imaginative wizarding world where wizards are just as horrible people as humans are, and the issues they're facing are the same horrible issues that we're trying to escape from. So I do think this film doesn't really work on the level of just like fun escapism. Like the whole tone of it is very glum and dire, and I think this kind of overall just a lot more cynical than kind of the more hopeful stories of like the Harry Potter movies. And I think one of the other big issues with this movie, which has been an issue with all three of the Fantastic Beasts movies, is just a very overly kind of convoluted script, which is surprising because whatever you think of J.K. Rowling, I think it's hard to deny that she is one of the most kind of imaginative and talented kind of writers of the generation, and she's very involved in writing the screenplays for these. So it's kind of shocking that these movies, the scripts have just been so bad, just kind of way too many plot lines kind of shoved in there. The story kind of goes nowhere. And especially this movie, just none of the events that happen, none of the things that the characters do are kind of consequential at all. Like one of the examples is one of the missions that Newt, the main character, and kind of his crew of good guys got to do. They got to fly or apparate or whatever they do over to Germany. And just to deliver one short, one-line message to a German politician, and they deliver it. But while they're doing that, Newt's brother gets captured, he gets arrested, gets put in kind of a German underground prison. Newt has to go rescue him and has kind of some adventures, and finally gets him out and rendezvous with the rest of the team back at Hogwarts. And like by the time he's done all that, like an hour and a half of the runtime has gone by, and like nothing was accomplished. Like the message they delivered to this politician was just ignored by the guy, and he keeps doing what he was going to do. Even like in the scene where they're like rendezvous, one of the characters, Newt's brother, kind of even says like, sorry to ask, but like, aren't we right back where we started? And it's almost this like weird, I don't know if it's like intentionally like meta moment of like nothing that has happened at this point. Like characters kind of went on these missions that didn't actually affect the plot. I think in the story, they're trying to kind of confuse Grindelwald by just doing all these things. But really like, they just sort of meander around doing these like kind of episodic things until the last half hour, and then they go do a totally different mission that didn't tie into anything that happened. There's another character that gets sent kind of as like an undercover spy to the bad guys, but like he doesn't get any intel from the bad guys, and the bad guys don't test his loyalty in any way. That his storyline kind of goes nowhere. Nothing was accomplished by that, even though he gets several kind of bigger scenes of just sort of being present. And that's kind of the problem is all throughout this movie is they kind of have all these characters now because they're 3 movies in, but they don't they really only have about 20 minutes of kind of runtime of plot, and then stretch that into about a 2 hour and 20 minute movie that is just hard to get invested when nothing seems to matter. I kind of kept waiting for like a big payoff, like a big reveal that showed how all these things that the characters have been doing kind of actually meant something and tied together, and that payoff just does not come, which is disappointing. The characters in this movie are somewhat hit or miss. Jessica Williams kind of plays a respected kind of teacher, that professor that goes on the adventure. She's a standout. She's enjoyable. The Jacob Kowalski, that kind of the Muggle out of water character, I've liked him in all 3 movies, and he's great again in this movie. He's kind of the one character that still brings some sense of like kind of the outsider view of like the wonder of this world, that actually thinks magic and all this stuff is like cool and not just sort of drab and boring. On the other hand, the Mads Mikkelsen, who takes over from Johnny Depp as Grindelwald, he's fine, but he's mostly boring. Newt and Queenie, 2 other kind of the mainstay characters, are mostly sidelined. They don't do a whole lot on this. Especially Queenie, she's more just sort of like a convenient plot device than really kind of contributing to anything. And Tina Goldstein, the other, probably my favorite of the kind of the core trio, the female lead for the first 2 movies, is gone. Whatever magical spell that the Warner Brothers use, she is not in this movie at all. She has 1 cameo or 2 cameos near the end, and they kind of give some convoluted explanation why she's just too busy to be involved in the story. So I don't know what's going on kind of behind the scenes of why she wasn't in this movie, but it's just sort of an example of this movie has this series has just really had nothing going for it, and even kind of losing its leads along the way. As far as content on the surface, profanity, all I heard, there was 1 minor profanity, starting with the letter H, and then there was kind of like at least 1 kind of British slang swear, which maybe you consider as a profanity. But other than that, I didn't hear anything else. Violence is really not violence, or not like bloody violence. Characters are like shot with spells and like flip around and stuff. But there's not like death or gore or anything. The one kind of maybe the most violent moment in this movie is this a giant kind of scorpion crab-like creature is kind of killing these prisoner guys and kind of regurgitating them for the smaller crab people apparently to eat, which is mostly kind of implied. You don't see that. It's not played in like a gory, shocking way. But that is, if you think about it, it's a little gross. Sexuality, that's probably the biggest one as far as this content as this goes. The kind of the homosexual romance between Dumbledore and Grindelwald has always been present in the first two movies, more alluded to. It was very clear that existed, and the movies weren't necessarily hiding that. This film, it is not subtle anymore. It is out in the open. There's not like kissing or love-making scenes between the two characters, but they speak open. The movie starts with them kind of meeting together in a restaurant and talking about their romance and their love for each other, and they kind of gaze at each other and place their hand over each other's heart, and so it's definitely there. It's not like every scene is there's tons of those scenes, but that romance is very much a central plot point in kind of hangs over all the movie. So stuff in there, you kind of knew that was coming just from what J.K. Rowling said about the characters and where the plot was going. But it's definitely getting more and more overt. So you definitely need to be just aware going into it that is kind of a lot more front and center than it has been in the first two movies. As far as kind of themes and stuff and kind of things going beneath the surface, one of the main themes that this kind of comes out in this movie is just that these characters are flawed. Like all people are flawed, and it kind of started, especially with like the character of Dumbledore. Again, his name is in the title. He's kind of he's a lot of the movie kind of focuses on his character and personality, and kind of the last couple of Potter movies. If you watch those movies, like, already kind of started to deconstruct him from that very idealistic, kind of wise, benevolent, noble mentor figure, and kind of try to pull the curtain back to say even Dumbledore has flaws, and this movie has continues to do that, continues to show him kind of a more broken man and someone that's made a lot of mistakes, and a lot of the characters are struggling with that. Queenie struggling with kind of going over to the dark side, and she's still in love with Jacob, and struggling with kind of various things. One of the sort of the storylines in this is that there's this magical creature, kind of like this deer-like creature, I think called the Chillin, which can see into your soul and kind of judge the worthiness of your heart. And, they kind of bow to only those that are worthy. And as they're kind of talking about this kind of deer-like creature, one of the characters is kind of say, hey, we used to use these a lot more in the wizarding world, but we just don't do it anymore because no one is worthy. We're all imperfect. We all have kind of baggage, no matter how hard you try. And in some ways, it is biblical in the sense of like a Romans kind of 3, or just all have sinned, no one does good, all have fallen short of the glory of God, and this film kind of looks at that, just sort of, hey, we're all sinful, even kind of the heroes have their issues. Kind of the response to that later, you have like Newt and Dumbledore are having their tea, and Dumbledore's kind of dejected, and Newt says to him, hey, even if we make mistakes or do terrible things, we can try to make things right, and that's what matters, trying. And Yoda might not agree with that, do or do not, there is no try, but Harry Potter, or at least Newt, is very much, hey, we are sinful, we are broken people, but that doesn't kind of let us off the hook of just trying to make things right, trying to do good in the world, trying to help people. And I think that is a fine message for Christian viewers to get into. Obviously, we know, from the Bible that our efforts can't fix it. Only kind of the saving power of Jesus can ultimately bring us out of just our sinful kind of human nature. But I do think that it is there is some stuff to kind of wrestle with thematically as far as just, hey, human sinful nature, but what does that mean in a world that is broken? How can we still kind of do our best to be lights in this world? So some of that stuff, I think there is definitely some themes to kind of latch on to and to sort of think through. So in the end, this movie has kind of the final nail in the coffin for me, I think, as far as this series goes. I don't know if this is the last one. The movie ends without a whole lot of closure, but there's also not really anything to like foreshadow or indicate like what future stories would be told. Like it's sort of this weird middle ground. So I don't know. I don't know if these movies are successful enough. This might be the last one of these movies that we get, and it's probably about 2 movies too long already. There just isn't an interesting enough story, I think, to keep this series going, especially into like a 4th or 5th. fifth movie. You know, I don't. In the end, like, I don't think a lot of audiences are going to need an obliviate charm to remove this from the memory. Just another kind of forgettable, just sort of uninspired movie. And it turns out maybe some secrets are just best left untold, and that's definitely the case with Secrets of Dumbledore. But hey, if you guys enjoyed this movie more than I did, if you're still really attached to these characters, and hey, maybe you're not, but you just there's just something about that wizarding world that has enough nostalgia for you that still kind of keeps bringing you back, even though you might not always enjoy it. Love to have that conversation with you guys in the comment section. Obviously, be respectful. Harry Potter can be maybe a controversial movie. Some Christians are very against the magic part. Some Christians are not, and I think there's room for Christian liberty in that. So whatever we talk about, let's do so with grace and with love and with charity. But I want to thank you guys for watching. If you haven't done so, subscribe to our channel, become a Collider. I got a lot of movies and live streams and other fun stuff we're doing. Like this video, but most of all, guys, stay safe and continue to collide with your world for Christ.